Hello there, it's time for us to leave behind all the noise of today. Turn off those harsh lights, set your phone down somewhere within React H and settle into the most comfortable position you can find. Do you hear it? Out there, the world is slowly falling asleep. Only the wind, the night, and my voice remain here with you. Let our tense shoulders soften. Take a deep breath in and let it out slowly, allowing all your worries to drift away like dust in the air. Tonight, I want to invite you into a dream. Imagine a beautiful paradox, something that shouldn't exist yet stands proudly against the flow of time. Have you ever pictured a kingdom built not on solid land, but on silver-crested waves and burning dunes, a radiant gold, and city floating between the desert and the sea, where kings did not hunger for continents, but only wished to command the winds? A people with no iron or stone, no endless rice fields stretching to the horizon, yet who made all of Southeast Asia's seas bow in awe for over 1,000 years. How could a narrow strip of land, its back against the mountains, face toward the sea, where scorching low winds strike the skin and storms visit each year, produce architectural wonders that defy time? How did they create red brick towers like eternal flames that modern science still cannot fully decipher? How did those people, with their mysterious smiles, turn the harshness of nature into the most magnificent epic of resilience? If you're ready, close your eyes together. We will drift backward through time, returning to a distant past where the fragrance of agarwood blends with the salty breath of the sea, where the rhythm of waves on coconut wood ships echoes like the heartbeat of heaven and earth before our vessel of time sets sail. I'm curious, where are you listening from? And what time is it now? Whether you're in a warm winter room or beneath a gently in ceiling fan of a tropical night, right now, we are here together. If you enjoy these journeys into memory, don't hesitate to leave a sign of support, so I'll know I'm not wandering alone. And now, let the darkness embrace you, and let the story begin. A people born of waves and fire, we're drifting toward the beginning, to a time when things were not yet moss-covered ruins, but fierce sprouts of life awakening. Our story begins not in grand palaces, but in the waves. It's the tale of a people born from sea foam and forged in the red fire of 1,000-degree kins. From those who fled far in search of a promised land, to kings who dreamed of touching the stars with towers taller than the ancient forests. Year 192, the day Khu Lien landed in Vietnam on sailing ships. Let your mind drift to the year 192 AD. The world was trembling with upheavals in the north. The Han dynasty was entering the twilight of its power, its grip loosening on distant frontier lands. But in the south, on the deep blue surface of the Pacific, a new force was rising, wild and mighty like tropical storms. In the stillness of tonight, imagine yourself standing on the central coast of Vietnam nearly 2,000 years ago. No skyscrapers, no electric lights, only endless white sand beneath the moonlight and the thunderous roar of waves striking the rocky shoal. And in that moment, from the distant horizon, dark spakes appear. They grow larger with each wave. These are not lone fishing boats. This is a fleet. Hundreds of reddish-brown sails billow in the wind, gliding across the sea like giant eagles. These ships came from the southern islands, Java, Sumatra, distant Austronesian archipelagos. They carried the sense of spices, of foreign lands, and more importantly, people seeking a new destiny. Leading them was a man history remembers as Khu Lien. He was no aging general on a throne. He was the ocean in human form, sunburnt skin, star-bright eyes, and the sinewy strength of a warrior hardened by storms. A merchant, a fighter, and a natural leader, carrying the fiery blood of the Austronesian people, those who saw the ocean not as a barrier, but as home. Behind him were 3,000 people, a migrating micro-society, and they didn't just carry food and weapons. No, they brought an entire culture on those rocking ships, hundreds of statues of Shiva and Vishnu wrapped in silk, Sanskrit scriptures, written on palm leaves, and most astonishing of all, a herd of war elephants. Can you imagine it? Giant elephants, symbols of power, gently standing on wooden rafts, crossing thousands of miles of ocean toward a new land. Their roars mixed with the roar of the sea, announcing the birth of a new era. When the first ship touched the sands of Tung Lam, modern-day Quang Nam and Khu Lien, stepped down, the sand gave way under his feet, warm and welcoming. Before him lay a narrow plain squeezed between the mighty Trong S and mountains and the vast ocean, not as broad and flat as the great river deltas to the north or south, but wild and proud towering limestone peaks, short but violent rivers, and a sky of impossible blue. Perhaps at that fateful moment, Khu Lien inhaled the dry, Lao wind mixed with the salty sea and declared boldly, "This land is beautiful. I'm staying." It wasn't just a statement. It was a declaration of independence. He refused the rule of Han officials who saw this place as a remote wasteland fit only for exiles. He saw potential others couldn't. He envisioned a kingdom that didn't need rice fields to survive. He named the newborn kingdom Lam Epi, the ancestor of the later Khmer Empire. He chose Simapura Lion City, modern Tracheu, as its first capital, and from the start, the nation followed a unique philosophy. We don't need vast land. We only need the sea and the wind, and so began a great transformation. Within 100 years after that landing, the Khmer did the extraordinary. They didn't flatten mountains to make rice fields. They embraced the rugged terrain. They claimed the entire coastline from Quang Bien down to the arid southern reaches of Bien Thung. They turned deep, wine-sheltered bays into bustling trading ports. Hainan, Ma Trang, Phan Rang, long before they were tourist heavens. They were Khmer creations, ships from Arabia, India, and sea. Hina had to stop here, trading gold and porcelain for agarwood, ivory, and fresh water. But the Khmer weren't just traders. They burned with a desire for eternity, while the Khmer built Angkor with massive stone blocks carved over centuries. The Khmer shook their heads with the mind of a seafaring people. They preferred agility, lightness, and endurance. Stone is too heavy, they thought. Brick is lighter, more beautiful. Why not build towers of baked earth, red like blood, bright like the sun over the sea? Their choice triggered the birth of an architectural legend, a mystery that still puzzles scientists today. The art of building towers with brick and tree resin. Imagine an ordinary brick, rough, fragile, lifeless. But in Khmer hands, it became sacred. They had no cement, no concrete yet. They aimed to build towers 20, 30, even 40 meters high straight into the sky, enduring the brutal climate of central Vietnam without collapsing. How did they bind millions of bricks into a single, seamless mass with no visible mortar? This is the question whispered by visitors at Mysn and Po Nuga. The secret lies in a formula the Khmer took to their graves. Part science, part magic. They selected the purest riverbank clay, kneaded it with spiritual devotion, and fired the bricks at precise temperatures, neither too brittle nor too soft. Some theories suggest the firing created a thin glass-like layer on the surface, preventing water absorption. That's why Khmer bricks remain moss-free and vividly red after thousands of years. But the most wondrous part was the adhesive, not industrial chemicals, but gifts from the forest resin from the diurai tree, mixed with wild honey, cane sugar, and powdered seashells. They applied this fragrant mixture to bricks, then ground the bricks together until their surfaces fit so tightly not even a strand of hair could slip between them. When the resin dried, it formed a waterproof bond harder than stone. And then they fired the entire tower again. Some believe that after completing the structure, the Khmer piled wood around it and burned the whole tower for days. The heat melted the resin bonds, fusing everything into one monolithic, flame-shaped monument. The result, masterpieces like Po Nuga, Po Klong Gare, and the sacred valley of Mysen towers blazing red ben. The sun, contrasting sharply against the green mountains and sky. Vietnamese settlers later marveled at them. What did they use? Why haven't the bricks fallen out after so many centuries of rain? And if the bricks could speak, perhaps they would reply with a Khmer smile, with love and a little magic. We built with faith. If you want to know, try building one yourself. No Southeast Asian civilization has ever replicated Khmer brickwork perfectly. Their towers stand as silent old soldiers guarding ancient memories, proof that their civilization reached a level where construction became art, and art merged with religion, a system of small kingdoms with big power. But dear friend, the brick towers and merchant fleets were not the strangest part. What made Champa unique in Southeast Asia and perhaps the ancient world was their political structure. While Viet or China centralized power under one king and one capital, Champa did the opposite. The terrain made central authority impossible. The long, narrow land was sliced by mountains, and short rivers travel from north to south could take a month. A king in Quang Nam couldn't know what was happening in Bien Yuen Thuns, so the Khmer created a brilliant system, what we now call a federation, but infused with sacred mandala philosophy. Champa was not a single kingdom, it was a loose but resilient alliance of 5 many kingdoms, like 5 fingers of a hand or 5 petals of a lotus. Let's name them each musical in its own way. Indrapura Quang Nam, Cart, Huk, Spiritu, or Heart, home of Mysen and Trakiu. Amaravati Quang, land of warriors and active ports. Vijaya Bien Yuen Hun, military capital, home of Jiban Citadel, and there they harbor the Iron F. Ist, Kothara Natrain, Kanhoa, land of agarwood and sea, ruled by goddess Po Nuga, wealthy and cosmopolitan. Pandurunga Nin Thun, Bien Yuen Thun, harsh but enduring keeper of Khmer culture to this day. Each had its own king, army, treasury, and guardian deity. No king could command another kingdom's people. They lived independently like islands at sea. So how did they survive? Wouldn't division weaken them? That is the genius paradox of the Khmer. Ordinarily, they acted separately, even fought, but when invaders approached, something miraculous happened. The 5 fingers clenched into a fist. Under the red Garuda banner, they united. The strongest king became Roger king of kings. The system was terrifyingly flexible. If Indrapura in the north fell, they moved south to Vijaya. If Vijaya fell, they moved to Kothara. If Kothara fell, they moved to Pandurunga. Like trying to capture a sea serpent, you seize one part, the rest slips away. This decentralization made Champa nearly impossible to destroy. For 1,000 years, great empires tried. Viet, Khmer, Mongols, Javanese, they could win battles, burn towers, capture capitals, but never extinguish Champa's spirit, because Champa didn't live in a single capital. It lived in the wind, in the shared faith in Shiva, in their Austronesian tongue, and in their fierce love of the sea. From boat-dwelling wanderers, exiles on their own vessels, the Khmer transformed the harshest, narrowest strip of Vietnam into a glorious maritime empire. They lived by the wind, built dreams of red brick, fought with proud smiles, and survey led by declaring, "We do not need much land, just enough to build our towers and face the sea." And so, amid the sun and wind of central Vietnam, a radiant civilization took root, like cacti blooming on burning sand. But this was just the beginning. The brightest, grandest, and most tragic chapters lie ahead in the golden age of the divine kings. Welcome back to our river of time. If you're still awake or drifting on the edge of sleep, let me gently pull the blanket of memory over your shoulders. We've just left the dawn of the civilization, where the first bricks were placed on scorching sand. Now let your breath drift lightly, like a dry leaf falling onto a quiet lake. In this next part of the night, we will no longer stand on desolate shores, we will step into a world of dazzling light, golden splendor, and intoxicating fragrances. Imagine standing at the gate of a tropical paradise where wealth isn't measured in gold, but in artistic refinement and the might of ocean-conquering fleets. This is the Golden Century. This is when Champa was not just a kingdom, but a legend that the East both coveted and feared. Close your eyes and let me guide you into its most radiant era, the age of divine kings and ports that never slept. The Golden Century, when Champa was the Dubai of the Indian Ocean 800-1200, if history were a piece of music, then the period from 800 to 1200 would be the most majestic crescendo of the Champa Symphony. It was the time when the sound of the Paraning drums echoed from the deep forests to the open sea, and merchant ships from all corners of the world flocked here like swarms of bees seeking nectar. People often said that if you dropped a gold coin into the sea off Champa during this era, it wouldn't sink to the bottom, but would float because the saltiness of the water had been diluted by the fragrances and precious spices dissolved within it. It's an exaggeration, of course, but it paints a picture of a prosperity so extraordinary it seems unreal. Champa at that time resembled the Dubai or Singapore of the ancient world, a colossal transshipment hub, the crossroads of civilizations, where gold flowed like water. King Indravarman II, the man who turned my son into the Vatican of the East. The story of this golden age did not beg in with the sword, but with a monumental religious dream. In the year 875, in the capital Indrapura, present-day Quang Nam, King Indravarman II ascended the throne. He was not a ruler fond of conquest, he was a devout man, an artistic soul imprisoned in royal robes. During long sleepless nights spent gazing at the starry sky, he was haunted by a single question: how can I bring the gods down to live among humankind? And so he issued a command that would forever transform the landscape of this land. I wish to build a holy sanctuary, a place so sacred and beautiful that even the supreme goddess, Hiva, looking down from Mount Kailash, would desire to descend to walk upon it. He chose a secluded valley, embraced by majestic mountains shaped like the beak of the divine bird, where a sacred stream murmured all year round. That place was my son. For the next 100 years, this once wild valley became a colossal artistic workshop. The air was always thick with incense smoke and the scent of fired bricks. Tens of thousands of the most talented artisans gathered there. They worked not out of fear of punishment, but out of blazing faith. They believed that every brick they laid was a step for their souls to ascend toward nirvana. The result was the birth of 70 radiant red brick towers, rising amid the deep green of the ancient forest like eternal torches. My son became the Vatican of the East, the greatest religious center of the entire region. Imagine walking through that valley at dawn in the 10th century. Mist still clings to the canopy of ancient trees, and the songs of forest birds echo against the mountainside. Before you stands the main temple, 24 meters tall, solemn and imposing. At the top of the tower, a solid gold linga reflects the first rays of sunlight, radiating a blinding glow that forces you to squint. But the miracle lies not only in the gold. It lies in the walls themselves. Upon those walls, sculptors breathed Ife into fired clay. Apsara dancers appear, mid-motion, their soft hands curving like silk ribbons, their feet lightly poised as if gliding over clouds, and most striking are their faces. Though they are stone, they smile a mysterious smile. Themselves under the reign of Indravarman II and his successors, Tantric Buddhism also arrived and intertwined with Hinduism, creating a rare spiritual culture of openness and tolerance. Buddhist monasteries rose beside Shiva temples. The sound of temple bells blended with Vedic chants. It was an age when the human spirit soared freely, unbound by rigid doctrines. But, my friend, An empire cannot survive on prayers and incense alone. To protect those golden towers and smiling Apsaras, Champa needed another kind of power, raw, fierce and terrifying. That is when we must turn to the sea, where wooden monsters lay sleeping, awaiting command. The Champa Navy, the monsters of coconut wood, leave the peaceful My Son V. Ali and follow the wine to the Thao Ne estuary Bin Din or the G estuary Quang Nam. The scene before you changes completely. The sea surface trembles beneath thousands of warships in formation. This was the pride and the terror of all Southeast Asia. The Khmer Navy, the Khmer were born of the sea, raised by waves, and understood the ocean better than anyone. They did not build tiny boats for fishing, they built floating fortresses. Chinese chronicles and reliefs on the Bayon Temple in Cambodia depict Khmer warships, the vessels that Westerners later called junk, the ancestor of the word junk. These were monsters 50 to 70 meters long, built from the toughest Thao and resinous dipterocarp wood of the Trong Sun forests. Each ship could carry up to 800 marines, along with provisions and fresh water for long ocean voyages. The prow was often clad in bronze and carved into the head of a Noga serpent or a Merkara sea beast, jaws open as if ready to swallow enemies whole. But these fearsome carvings were not the deadliest weapons. On deck stood bare-chested Khmer warriors with bronze skin, wielding a special weapon, the repeating crossbow. This machine bow could fire 10 poison-tipped arrows at once. When a Khmer fleet unleashed its volleys, the sky darkened under storms of arrows, and the wind screamed like death itself. Beyond that, the Khmer were masters of military chemistry. They knew how to create a kind of liquid fire from cajaput oil, tree resin, and sulfur. In naval battles, they hurled fiery projectiles or pumped burning oil onto enemy ships. This fire did not die. On water it roared even higher, turning the sea into a blazing inferno. The pinnacle of Khmer naval power came in 1177, a shock the Khmer Empire would never forget. Imagine the Khmer Empire at its peak, with its capital Angkor, modern Siem Reap, considered impregnable, deep inland and protected by the vast Tonle Sap Lake. No one believed an enemy could attack from the water, but the Khmer did the impossible under King Jaya Indravarman IV. The Khmer fleet secretly sailed up the Mekong River, slipped through the maze of waterways, hauled ships over treacherous rapids, and suddenly appeared on Tonle Sap Lake at the very doorstep of Angkor. The Khmer were slumbering in their arrogance. When they saw the red sails of Champa covering the lake, they could not believe their eyes. What followed was slaughter. Champa's forces stormed the greatest city of the ancient world. They burned wooden palaces, seized mountains of gold, and captured the Khmer king. Angkor fell. The mighty Khmer Empire bowed before the children of the sea. The event of 1177 was not merely a military victory, it was a thunderous declaration. Champa was no minor state. They were bold conquerors, daring enough to execute the most insane strategies. The great Khmer king Jayavarman VII later spent 20 bitter years reclaiming his capital. Afterwards, on the stone walls of Bayon, he carved scenes of that dreadful naval battle. Look closely at those bas-reliefs and you will see detailed depictions of Khmer warriors, lotus-shaped umets, spears in hand, and on their lips still a smile. It was a haunting smile. The Khmer later whispered among themselves, never trust a Khmer smile. They smile brightly and invite you to drink, but when you're drunk, they'll burn your ship. War, plunder, conquest, these sound brutal. But in the mindset of the ancients, they were ways to assert dominance, and from these campaigns, combined with the Navy's protection, Champa opened another path, the path that brought unparalleled wealth, commerce, trade, the hot blood of the empire. If My Son was the soul and the navy its muscle, then trade was the hot blood pulsing through Champa's veins. Look at Champa's location. It sat right at the crossroads of the Maritime Silk Road. Every ship traveling from China to the south or from India or Arabia to the east, had to sail along Champa's coast to avoid storms and resupply. The Khmer, with their shrewdness, seized this heaven-sent opportunity. They turned ports like Dai Kham Hoyan and Thi Nai Kwai Non into bustling megacities of trade. Close your eyes and imagine standing in the Thi Nai port in the 11th century. The first thing you hear is a vibrant chaos of languages ringing Arabic, deep Sanskrit, noisy Chinese, and the lilting bird-like Khmer tongue. The next thing that overwhelms you is the fragrance, not the stench of fish, but a luxurious blend of scents. Premium agarwood fills the warehouses, the kind so precious that Chinese emperors would trade an entire city for a small piece. Cinnamon, pepper, and camphor mix into a dizzying perfume, goods piled high along the docks, ivory gleaming white, curved rhino horns, silk smooth as water, and jade glazed ceramics of exquisite craftsmanship. Champa exported what its forests and seas offered and imported the finest treasures of the world. But there was one commodity that Western and Arab texts often mentioned with astonishment: gold. Gold was so abundant that people claimed Khmer kings paved their palace floors with it. Statues of Buddha and Shiva were cast in solid gold, life-sized. When a Khmer king went to war or took a stroll, he was draped entirely in gold, shining like a walking sun. Where did this wealth come from? Partly from mountain gold mines, but mostly from trade taxes and piracy. Indeed, the line between navy and pirate was thin. If merchants paid taxes, the Khmer Navy protected them. If they evaded taxes or belonged to enemy states, the Khmer became fearsome pirates. A story recorded by the Arab merchant al-Masudi in 950 recounts his experience at a Khmer port. He wrote, "In this kingdom, people trade with a strange trust. I gave them gold, and they did not weigh it to precisely the wire returned to me agarwood and smiles. Here people pay with gold, but receive smiles in return, and sometimes I feel that the smiles of those girls selling spices were worth more than the gold I handed them." This openness, wanderer's spirit, and charm made Champa a magnet for merchants. They came not only to trade, but to indulge. Champa was like an ancient Las Vegas after months at sea, facing death daily. Sailors arriving here plunged into fine wine, mesmerizing Apsara dances, and nights of revelry. Taxes were paid in gold, slaves, and sometimes in the form of exquisite dancers from distant lands. Khmer blood thus intertwined with others, becoming diverse and beautiful. You could find Khmer people with blue eyes, curly hair, or ebony-toned skin, all living together under the sun-drenched sky for centuries. Champa stood at the height of prosperity. They did not need to till the land. They only had to unfurl their sails, and the world brought riches to their doorstep. It was an economy built on movement, daring, and allure. But, dear friend, the laws of nature are cruel. Whatever reaches its peak must decline. The sun shines brightest at noon. That is also the moment it begins its descent. Excessive wealth breeds complacency. Endless campaigns drained the populace, and the surrounding enemies, once stunned, began learning how to counter Champa's strength. By the end of the 12th century, the monsoon winds still blew, but in them was the scent of farewell. Cracks appeared on the once proud walls. A long, tragic, and magnificent twilight awaited this people. But before we step into that final, tear-stained chapter, let us pause. Let your mind anchor itself in this moment of glory. Imagine sitting on a cliff at Dailan Cape, gazing down at the East Sea below you. Hundreds of crimson-sailed ships cut through the waves, carrying gold, agarwood, and dreams of conquest. Conch horns echo, and the whispers of the waves sound like the ocean applauding its beloved children. It is beautiful, isn't it? Hold that image in your dreams tonight. Prosperity, pride, and the blazing light of a golden age. And now, let your body relax even more. take a deep breath of the imagined incense. We will rest for a moment before entering the final part of the story, the most heartbreaking yet most beautiful chapter, the farewell of the children of the sea and how they vanished to become eternal. The night has grown a little later. Do you feel the space around you settling down? The noisy sounds of the city have completely faded, leaving only the steady rhythm of your own breathing. If you're still awake to listen to this voice, then perhaps you are someone who cherishes quiet moments, those moments where the past and the present blend into one. We've journeyed together through the radiant dawn of those born from sea foam. We've been overwhelmed by the blazing summer noon of a guild empire, where merchant ships crowded the ports and fiery towers rose proudly into the sky. But my dear friend, the laws of the universe are immutable. Every sun must eventually set, every flame, no matter how bright, will one day burn to ash. In this final part of tonight, I invite you to step into the twilight of history. Don't be sad. Sunset, too, has a beauty of its own. It is the beauty of tragedy, of acceptance, and of one last defiant smile before darkness descends. Pull your blanket a little higher, relax your whole body, and let us drift into the flow of the final days, when a people chose to fade into nothingness in order to become immortal. Sunset in the monsoon winds and a very calm ending. Our theme now is fading, but this is not the fading of a withering flower. It is the fading of a shooting star blazing one last time before disappearing into the ocean's depths. It is the story of a people who chose to die with honor, yet still managed to leave behind a mysterious smile. 1471, the year Diviet defeated Champa, but not completely. The timeline takes us to 1471. This is a fateful milestone, a deep scar in Southeast Asian history. At this moment, in the north, Diviet under King La Than Tung was rising more powerfully than ever before. It was a state tightly organized under Confucian principles, with iron discipline, a massive army, and modern firearms. Meanwhile, Champa in the south still lived its wandering dream, still a collection of loose principalities, still believing more in divine protection than in military discipline. Two great philosophies, two great civilizations, collided. One was the civilization of wet rice and order. The other, the civilization of the sea and freedom. That collision was inevitable. That year, King La Than Tung personally led 250,000 troops southward. Imagine that number, 250,000 men. The weight of their footsteps shook the entire Trong Sen range. Yellow dragon embroidered banners filled the sky, and the cannons thundered like storms. Facing that tempest, Champa had only around 30,000 soldiers. The Khan king at that time, Tr. Atone, known by his fierce name Bandlotra Tone, was brave, but bravery alone was not enough. The imbalance was far too great. The decisive battle took place at the citadel of Jiban Vijaya, modern Bien Hun. It was a tragic day in Khmer history. The sky over Bien Hun was grey, and the sea wind whipped across the faces of its warriors. The Khmer soldiers fought with the desperation of those defending their final home. They fought over every moat, every brick wall, but the cannons of Diviet shattered everything. Jiban fell. King Tratone was captured alive. Tens of thousands were killed or taken prisoner. The once glorious capital, the commercial center of the entire East Sea, was now engulfed in smoke and ruin. If this had been an ordinary kingdom, the story would have ended here, the king dead or captured, the capital lost, the people scattered, the empire completely collapsed. But, and this is the miraculous, but of the Khan people, they did not surrender. Out of fate, the survivors, princes, nobles, remaining generals led the remnants of their people on a great retreat. They left the ruined Jiban behind, left the temples and memories behind, wiped their tears, and continued southward. They stopped at Panduranga, the land of today's Phan Rang and Ninh Thuan. This was the southernmost region of their kingdom, dry harsh, where only cacti, burning and howling winds survived. Here, they began again. They looked at one another and smiled a bitter yet resilient smile. Fine, we lost the northern lands, we lost thou Nepal, but we still have the sea. We still have the wind. They rebuilt the smaller, humbler kingdom of Panduranga, but kept the soul of their ancestors intact. They still worshipped Shiva, still built boats, still traded Evi, and if no longer on the same scale. Can you imagine such vitality? Defeated, cornered, stripped of nearly all their territory, yet they refused to bow their heads in slavery. For more than 300 years, yes, you didn't mishear. 300 more years this tiny kingdom of Panduranga survived independently, enduring hardship amid the pressures of surrounding powers. It was a strange period in history, a ghost kingdom that continued to function, still sent envoys to China, still occasionally plundered Western ships passing by as if to remind the world, hey, Champa's not dead, we're just taking a little rest. 1832, the last day of a people. But time is a cruel river. It wears away everything, even mountains of stone. Let us fast forward to the 19th century. By now the map of Vietnam had taken its full shape under the Nguyen dynasty. Emperor Min and a strict ruler with strong centralizing ambitions decided that the existence of an autonomous kingdom like Panduranga was no longer acceptable. 1832. This is the number engraved in the hearts of all Khmer people. The fateful year, Min Maung decreed the abolition of Champa's autonomy, fully annexing Panduranga into Vietnamese territory, dividing it into administrative districts, installing officials, and enforcing harsh assimilation policies. The last king of Champa, Po War Kray, known in Vietnamese records as Nguyen Van Thia, was a tragic figure. He had no powerful army, no allies. He was summoned to the Hue capital, placed under house arrest, and eventually died in sorrow. In 1835, the Garuda-embossed royal flag was lowered, golden royal seals were melted down. Palm leaf manuscripts were confiscated. The name Champa was officially erased from the political map after more than 1,600 years of existence. It was a silent death. There was no thunderous war like in 1471, only an imperial decree, administrative replacement, and a gradual extinguishing. But in those darkest days, the Khmer people did something that would move future generations to tears. They built one last tower. The Po Rong Tower in Ninh Thuan. If you visit it someday, you'll find it is not as large or intricate as Po Nuka or Mysn. Its brick is no longer the bright red of earlier days. Time has darkened it. Its carvings are simpler, rougher. Why? Because it was built in urgency, in pain, in mourning. It was not a tower for boasting wealth, it was a tomb, a memorial. The Khmer built Po Rong not to pray for power, but to bid farewell to their glorious past. The image of the last Khmer craftsmen, their hands trembling as they placed the final bricks on the tower, while imperial soldiers watched nearby, is both beautiful and unbearably tragic. They knew that after this tower, no other Khmer tower would ever rise again. And when the tower was completed, the Khmer made another migration, not a physical one, but a migration into memory. They left their cities and retreated into villages hidden behind sandy hills. Gilai, sheltered beneath sparse tamarind and acacia trees. They shed their royal garments, replacing them with plain coarse fabric. They hid their gold statues deep in mountain caves and buried the secrets of tower building underground. They chose to become invisible. The imperial court wanted them to change their names, dress like Vietnamese, and forget their origins. But behind the earthen walls of their villages, the flames still smoldered. By day they farmed, made pottery, and wove cloth like ordinary peasants, but at night, under the moon of the dry plains, they whispered to their children about mighty fleets, divine kings, and why the towers still stood on the hills. The Khmer did not disappear, they simply dissolved tea. Hay melted into the sand, the sun and the wind of central Vietnam. They chose another way of living, quiet, humble, yet fiercely proud. Heritage still blooms in the monsoon winds, and now let us return to the present, tonight as you lie in your soft bed, out there across the sunburnt, windswept land of central Vietnam. The Khmer towers still stand, towering against the night sky. More than 1,000 years have passed. The wooden palaces of ancient kings have rotted to dust. The warships have sunk deep into the sea, now home to coral. The bustling silk roads have been overtaken by dis and concrete. Only the brick towers remain. Is this irony, or the elegant design of history? Structures built from fragile baked clay have outlasted steel and stone. Today, if you stand before the Poklongare Tower in Phan Rang at a late sunset, when the sky glows crimson like spilled blood and the sea breeze carries a salty sting, you will feel something strange. You will hear the perennial drums thumping from afar, not just drums, but the heartbeat of the land. You will hear the Serenai flute wailing like the cries of ancient spirits. And somewhere in the wind is the playful laughter of Khmer girls balancing water pots on their heads as they walk home. And if you ever ask an elderly Khmer man, a grandfather sitting in the tower's shadow, his eyes cloudy as he goes toward the horizon, "Sir, your people were once a great empire ruling the East Sea. Why are there only small villages now? Are you sad?" I believe he would smile the same mysterious smile as on the lips of 1,000-year-old Apsara dancers. He would point to the towers, then to the vast sea, and speak in a slow, deep voice. "We haven't disappeared, we simply moved house. We used to live on the sea, in palaces. Now we live in sand, in wind. The sand is still here. The towers still stand, and the smile remains. Empires fall, kings die, but the soul of the Khmer is like a cactus. The drier it is, the more beautifully it blooms." That is history's final answer. Victory does not belong to those who take the most land or spill the most blood. Victory belongs to those who keep their smile and identity in the ruthless currents of time. The Khmer have proven that the soft power of culture endures longer than the hard power of swords. They turned the sorrow of losing their nation into a radiant cultural legacy, into the vibrant Cape Festival, the intricate brocade textiles, and the enduring brick towers that remain one of humanity's greatest mysteries. And so the story of the Empire of Wind and Sand closes here. The Champa Kingdom took its final breath in 1832, in the silence of the monsoon winds. But it did not die in humiliation. It died like a 1,600-year epic, a tragic ballad of seafaring people without a home, who dared to dream of towers reaching the heavens, who loved beauty with such extremity that they chose to live and die with it. Tonight, before sinking into deep sleep, spare a moment to remember them. Imagine yourself standing atop Po Nuga Tower, overlooking the shimmering lights of Nha Trang Bay. The salty sea breeze runs through your hair. In the murmur of the waves, you can still faintly hear the shouts of sailors aboard dragon ships returning from Java or India, laden with spices and silk. But all of that is only an illusion. Those ships will never return. They are forever drifting along the river of memory. Champa did not lose. It simply chose a different way to live, quieter, deeper. They are street ill here, in every grain of sand beneath your feet, in every red brick, and in the smile of the Khmer girl you might meet by chance on the road. It's just that they prefer to stand atop their ancient towers and look down at us modern people rushing about with a forgiving and mysterious smile. Sleep well, my companion. And tonight, if in your dream you see a Khmer woman in a red dress, her long black hair blowing in the wind, standing atop a blazing brick tower, smiling and waving at you, don't be afraid. It is just Champa saying, "Thank you for remembering us. Wishing you a peaceful night."